Here's a view of the transom. Once the paper thin layer of old fiberglass was removed, it was rather compromised, and the plywood beneath it was rotten. It was only about an inch thick of plywood. There is room to put back 2 3/4 inch pieces, so I'll probably replace it with 1.5 inches of marine plywood and then several plies of fiberglass tied back in, tabbed into the hull and into the side of the hull there also. And of course, that'll be after the stringers are installed. Anyhow, right there you can see there was a lot of foam under here, and I've excavated that. And I had to do that just right up into there. And you can see where there used to be all that white. It used to be foam, so I've scoured that back. And that foam was sprayed on heavy and dense. It helped bond at that layer there between the cap, the shell on top of the boat, and the hull on the bottom. And you can see a little bit of evidence there that I've cut through the back of the transom. I'll show you from the outside. And but this is how she looks. And there is enough room here that I'll be able to piece in plywood into the transom in 2 layers. Okay, this is the transom from the outside. So my original plan was to cut this transom about 3 inches from the corners and cut it out and excavate it from the old plywood from this way and put in new plywood that way. But the inner layer is so bad that it had to be, it's where I excavated it from the inside, and we'll retain this outside and we'll keep the original corners. The only thing I'll have to do is fill a few of the holes that won't be reused. And the other thing I did here was cut. This used to come over. This was part of the cap, the top shell. It used to come over to here. I've cut it back, and I've cut it back here. This will be repaired after. I'll have the minimum. I'll fair this out, and I won't repaint the whole cap. I'll just repaint the well. I'll mask it, and this gel coat I'm just going to polish up. That's all. But here I'll repaint the well inside, and when I do repair this, it'll be wrapped around like so. And this will have an aluminum plate battery installed here, but it'll be bonded to this also. And I will have minimum finishing, as I mentioned, of the transom, though I will repaint it. It'll just be a contrasting color or black, or actually it'll be white, and I'll stop it at the corners. This is the plan for replacing the plywood in the transom of the Sunray. This is from the inside. Imagine the inside. This is the profile of the transom that exists. So from the inside, I've removed the glass and fiberglass, and we're down to this. It's all scoured and ready. Has numerous holes in it. We leave those at this point. They'd be taped over on the other side. But we go here and we have some puzzle jointed pieces. There's a gap right here, 1.5 inches wide, that I can tuck things down in. Like I can tuck this in, and it will fit, and plop, it goes down here. So there will be chopped strand mat and with thickened epoxy there, and this will be treated also with a layer of epoxy just to prime it, and plop it in there. Okay, and the same with this one. There is room. It can bypass, go like that. These are 3/4 inch pieces fitting through an 1.5 inch slot. Boom. Okay. At this point, I can wedge 2x4s against the bottom that go back to structure in the boat that keep those tucked in good contact. Up here, I utilize existing holes, motor mount holes, and other holes for different fittings that were on the hull or on the transom, and suck it in. Now wipe off any excess and make sure that puzzle joint is filled well, and that the corners are filled, not filleted, just filled. And then we let that set. And once it's basically set, it'll probably be the next day, it'll probably be 12 hours later, something like that. We come back, and there is just enough room for this to slide in. Oops. If I, and this is another 3/4 inch piece of plywood. If I pry the cap back just a little bit, I have the clearance such that once I put chop strand here and thickened epoxy. I'll be able to just slide it in and then get it to seat. And from the inside, I can go inside the boat and this fits. And I work it in like that and seat it and put this in. So now I've got the outer layer, I've got 3/4 inch, I got chop strand, I've got 3/4 inch plywood, I've got a 3/4 inch, or rather I have chop strand, and then I have this last 3/4 inch. So total, I've got 1.5 inches of transom. Make sure the puzzle joints are filled and everything's clean, and I come back later. Then I will get into filleting, stuffing in the crevices and filleting generously, and glassing over the whole thing, filleting, wrapping into the sides and the hull, and doing about 3 layers of 1708 matte backed glass, and that'll be it. And then the stringers actually will go in after the firewall. I might have misspoke in an earlier video, but the stringers will go here and here. The center one doesn't go all the way to the back. There's going to be a well there for the sump or for the bilge. So that's the plan at this point for the Sunray transom.